Well, welcome along to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain Oso.
It's a beautiful Monday morning. I'm Kayode Okikelu.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde.
You know what they say about that hierarchy of needs, right? I mean, there's housing, feeding, shelter.
Yep.
Basically physiological needs. And I mean, when you relate that to Nigeria, I mean, it's a given, right? There are the covenants of the United Nations that says housing, for example, should be a given. Everybody should have access to it, like a right, as it were. But when you bring that to Nigeria, and you say that we have about 17 million housing deficit, as at today in Nigeria, according to the stats, and we need trillions to literally fill that gap. You begin to ask, how, as you say, how far so far? How close are we to bridging that? But when you take a look at the indices, like the price of cement, for example, which is, I mean, what you need. I mean, take a look at that, 17 million units. So price of cement, depending on where you are, 3,500, 4,000 naira. I mean, there was a time I remember cement used to be less than 1,000 naira. And even at that time, it was expensive. So imagine now that it's 3,500, 4,000, depending on where or how much you're buying. Take a look at the cost of buying land and the other, costs attached. You wonder, how close are we to bridging that gap? I know there's been talks about mortgage, getting facility to build houses. If you go to banks, I mean, the interest rate is huge. We have government funds as well, but you know how hard it might be to access those ones. So, I mean, I don't want to paint that picture as it is dire. Truth is, it is dire, but apparently there are ways out, and I hear that certain people are actually suggesting laterite, which is some type of clay, to actually build houses such that people can have access to affordable housing. And the questions are, for me, how much investment has gone into that? And I mean from the government. If we're saying that this is our low-hanging fruit, as they say, how are we ensuring that it is indeed low enough for people to reach it? I mean, that's the essence of a low-hanging fruit. And what experts say, they say it's even stronger, it is cheaper, and the rest, as you can see, that's laterite being formed. And it's sort of like Lego, where you just interlock and it makes housing easy. I mean, if we have 17 million housing deficit, I imagine if you multiply that by an average of 2 people per home or 3 people per home, imagine how many people don't have access to proper housing. It's a huge challenge. Add that to insecurity. Imagine if people don't have houses or they don't have access to housing. Imagine the lengths they will go to at least get that. So, I mean, our challenges are right there in front of us, but the problem, or the question rather, is, are we ready to take them on?
The number one challenge that comes to me is something every time we have this kind of conversation. Chamberlain is pointing us to the laws and the policies. And naturally, I'm asking in my head, I mean, in this issue that you have raised, what's our national housing policy? And how far so far with it? Going by that phrase again. I remember that even during the military, as far back as year 2000, as far back as the 80s, 90s, you heard slogans like housing for all by the year 2000. And then it was pushed to housing for all by the year 2010, and on like that. So the question in my head right now is, do we really mean these policies? Do we really intend to execute these policies? Was it not in 2019 also that we understand that the National Housing Fund Act was passed? Okay, so how far so far with that? If the laws are good for, if these policies are good for Nigerians, how come Nigerians don't even know about them? And how do we even phrase these things in order to even give people any sense of ownership of these policies? These are so many questions that people would be asking. And then add that to execution. Oh, we have brilliant laws. We have brilliant policies. But for God's sake, in the first place, how do we even, what's the plan? Do we plan to execute the policies that we enact in the first place? We're not talking about this housing deficit just now. We didn't just start to talk about them. They've been there for many years. People living on the bridges, people living in deplorable states. And one is wondering, what's the sense of humanity that we even implore when we're doing some of these things? I could go on and on, but it looks and feels frustrating. But when you even the houses that people even live in now, go check them out.
I mean, that's a topic for a whole
Go check them out. I mean, we talk about urban Nigeria, suburban Nigeria, rural Nigeria, and even in states like Lagos, states like Oyo, states that's when you think about modern Nigeria, these are the states you will probably think about, Port Harcourt and all of that. The houses that people live in now, what kind of facilities do people live in? You find 8 people living in one room. And we're talking about housing deficit of 17 million for a population allegedly up to 200 million. Have we even started?
Well, look, there's just so much to focus on. But, yeah, I think we do remember the Minister of Works and Housing, identifying the kinds of houses that different regions, that suits different regions, because government couldn't go with a particular kind of policy or housing and say we need to replicate this everywhere. So he's been able to identify that, look, from what we've seen, it turns out that in different areas, they like different kinds of houses. So that's one. And then I think they say inflation rate has consistently risen for 11 months. So it's gotten to about 12.82% now. So, but it's good to see the spirit out there in terms of people taking a look at alternatives, such that, because, I mean, you can't say because things are not going the way you think or they should, and so everybody sits on their hands. Well, much as, yes, we all love to see things a lot better, but they're still doing something. And so, and you know what it is. It's not easy for people to change from the way they are used to building their houses to a new one. I tell you, it's usually a huge challenge. The people need to move from this type of house and then adopts this one. Not that it's not a good thing to do, but I guess we need to see a lot of people do it more, and then who knows? And then, of course, the encouragement, you just never can tell. But
don't also, my apologies, Chamberlain, for butting in. Don't also forget the issues that, Kayode has raised. I mean, you talked about people living in this kind of house and that kind of house.
Yeah.
The first question that comes to their head is, where am I going to get the money from?
Money to live in
the options, build the houses and all.
I think I saw a picture recently, of people actually coming together to build houses for each other. I don't know if that's still workable these days. I mean, we have a population, right? So you could just gather people in your community and say, well, build my house. I'll join hands to build your house. And I mean, I know it's utopian over here.
Yeah, and we've been reminded several times that the housing markets there is actually not a true reflection of what the economy says. I mean, there's this artificial pricing that people have there. So it's not really based on any particular model as you see in some other areas, based on people's income and things like that. That's why the housing policy, federal mortgage housing, people find it difficult to access those grants, even though government says, yes, go ahead and check it out. You should be able to. But let's take a look at this report and see what they even highlighted.
Nigeria's population growth rate is estimated to be around 2.55%, a statistic that has a huge impact on the housing sector, which is experiencing a deficit of over 17 million units. In 2016, the World Bank estimated that the country required 59 trillion naira to plug the gap, at which time a bag of 50 kg cement was roughly 2,000 naira. Fast forward to 2021, the price of same commodity has almost doubled, casting doubt on the capacity of an average Nigerian to own a home. As far as building design technologist Anosike Mordecai is concerned, Nigeria must begin to seek indigenous and cultural-based technology to solving its housing problem.
In countries like Japan, where wood growth is highly encouraged, they do a lot of building with constructions with wood, such as the North American continent as well. In Africa, what do we have abundant? We have the laterite. The advantage of that stabilized earth brick is that it is not less than 5% lower when it comes to thermal comfort.
Necessity is said to be the mother of invention, and some Nigerians are already walking that talk. Abiodun is one who explores nature using laterite to make bricks.
Bricks by nature actually have inherent benefits such as fireproof, soundproof, bulletproof, and even thermal efficiency.
The production requires less water and cement, yet far resilient and stronger than a normal concrete mastering unit or block.
Minimum strength can have here is 10 megapascals, and if you try to check how the materials we have or the bricks materials we have out there, you really read up to 2 or even 1.5 megapascal.
He says he saved about 30% of the cost of putting up this show home.
Because these bricks are actually interlocking bricks, so they basically stack into each other like the simple Lego games kids play with. So it's pretty very easy to construct with.
The house is also fully powered by natural and renewable energy sources.
Renewable means basically they are going, we specifically go off-grid. It means we're not connected to PACN, neither are we connected to the use of generator. So it's basically powered by hybrid renewable sources.
Abiodun hopes government keys into this concept and replicate it across the country, which can relieve the burden on the housing sector. Looking inwards means making the most of what one has. And this is an example of someone who's decided to look inwards. And brick by brick, today, he has his dream of owning a house come true. Chris Elems, Channels Television News.
There you go. What an interesting one. So you should give it a try, if you can.
It's a Monday morning, so it's a good way to go.
What about Tuesday? You can't go that way Tuesday or
It's
any
a
other
Monday
day?
morning. The Guardian newspaper is waiting for you.
On the Monday morning?
Yes.
It does every morning, actually. Not just on the Monday morning. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the dailies and see what they highlight. Okay, so let's start with The Guardian today. So look at the front page of The Guardian. It's a little different from perhaps what you might probably expect, but they focus on... Well, where did you see The Guardian, guys?
Okay, well, it's on... We'll be back.
All right, so we'll start with The Guardian. We'll start with the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. So go ahead then.
Well, that's what you have on the front page, where traffic robbers hunt communities in Lagos and Kano. I mean, we're not talking about this for the first time, are we?
Oh, yes. It's a huge one. I had someone giving me an account of his experience, a taxi driver, actually. And he was saying that it happened, and interestingly, a few meters ahead, they had, policemen stationed there. So when they eventually got out of that whole melee, they went to the policemen and said, they're robbing at the back. And, he said for him, the body language of a policeman, they drove past and no action was taken. He just thought, wait a minute, aren't you meant to even be protecting us and you're just there standing? I know that it might be quite tricky, but when you have that kind of response from policemen, according to that taxi driver, you begin to wonder, what's the point?
No, the question you're asking is, am I safe? And if one of the riders there, I think the second rider, says U.S., India alert citizens. That's essentially saying, are we safe? It's a big question right there on the front page of the paper. And then right under the picture you see there on the front page, bandits raid Zaria Hospital, abduct babies and staff. What is that?
It's the headline you read. That's how bad it is now.
Yeah.
But it's, it's difficult to process, to fathom, to comprehend. You never would have thought that it would get to this. But that's what it is.
Raid hospitals to abduct babies and staff. And this is the North, right? And I'm just wondering. Anyway, that's the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
Well, let's take a look at the Guardian. Hopefully, we can get the Guardian eventually now. Yes, let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper this morning and see what's the big story. Something that has been in the news for a while, and there you go, the Guardian newspaper.
Oh, finally.
Yeah. Debt service burden subsidy may push deficit above 7 trillion naira this year.
Wow.
Yeah. And you see deficit already 3 trillion at the end of May. That's 2 months ago. Debt service ratio hits 97%.
If that isn't alarming, I wonder what will be.
Maybe
7%.
Maybe people need to understand what that means. That essentially is probably saying if you borrowed 100 naira, to service it, you spend 97 naira. I mean, I hope I'm wrong.
It means whatever income you have, if you need to fund the budget, if you use 97% of that to service your debt, what do you have left?
You don't have any money. You don't have any money. That's essentially what it means.
I mean, don't take it away from the Guardian newspaper this morning. The details are there. It started on the front page.
Yeah, I mean, people should read it.
On page 2.
So they can understand properly what that actually, entails.
Wow.
97%.
So you might want to find out 97% of what does that mean? I know it's a conversation that is ongoing. It's a debate that is ongoing. But right under the picture you see there, you see third wave scare. Yes, let's talk in COVID-19 third wave. Lagos inspects synagogue ahead of Joshua's burial. You see, deadly Delta variant already in 96 countries, says WHO. I mean, the last time I checked, I think it was about 30 countries, now 96 countries. You see, Nigeria records 71 new cases, Lagos with 63. And fears over misappropriation of 10 billion naira released for local manufacture of vaccines. Well, the NAFDAC DG did have a conversation with Channels Television. You should catch that definitely, and I know she was speaking about the process to that. So if there are fears over misappropriation of 10 billion naira, you wonder what that means. It starts on the front page, continues on page 2. PIB, of course, is still in the news, as well as other stories. Let's leave it there for the Guardian newspaper.
Okay, take a look at the NewsDirect next. Credit to private sector adds 296.8 billion naira, as ascribed to the CBN. And then you see some of the riders here now. Increase caused by inflation, naira depreciation, ascribed to the former CIBN president. No noticeable impact on real sector, Professor Owaleke. Increase resulting from crippled economy caused by insecurity, analysts. And then you see net domestic credit hits 44.7 trillion naira. So it's all about the economy today. That's NewsDirect this morning. Nakwe?
Okay, good morning, gentlemen. Been listening to the conversation, and all manner of songs have been twirling through my head. And I don't want to sing the one that's coming close, but who knows, something about the year 2000. Let's take a look at what some of the dailies are saying here in Abuja, and I'd like to start with the Abuja Inquirer for you. It has this one. The story's been on for a while now, but it looks like there is a bigger dimension to it on the front page of the Abuja Inquirer this morning. Teen student's death. Abuja elite school under fire. GBV coalition alleges cover-up. School says parents poorly manage students' health. We are investigating, that's according to the police. Look into her family, that's attributed to a source. You find details on page 3 of the paper. You also have this one, FRS grants 1-month extension for filing of tax returns. That's also there. You have a number of other stories for you at the bottom, just beneath the nameplate. Food shortage. Federal government must tackle insecurity and fund a Greek. Who's speaking? You might want to flip to page 13 of the paper. It might interest you to know that a lot of communities around the Federal Capital Territory are now taking to farming, but the insecurity situation has, forced a number of people to, reconsider what's happening around their farms. But look at this. After almost 2 years, FCTA to name mandate secretaries. So they also have that story for you on page 5 of the paper. Let's leave it there for the Abuja Inquirer.
Do we try Blueprint next and see what they lead with? I think it's somewhat different from that one. It's about security, incidentally, so take a look at that. COAS to troops. Don't rest. Uh-oh. Okay, so it's a different version we've got here. You know how these things work. So, Mark, I guess the ball is in your court then.
Blueprint saying, COAS to troops, don't rest until you end insurgency rebellion. That's what I also have here in Abuja. So I don't know where that version, are you sure? I hope there's no mistake there. But don't rest until you end insurgency rebellion. Remain focused, professional. That's according to a cleric group urges federal government to grant Kanu access to medical treatment. Patriotic Nigerians championing secession. That's according to an Oshun monarch. So you find that on the front page of Blueprint. Yeah, that's it. Don't rest until you end insurgency rebellion. You also have that one. Respect your throne. Ignore sentiments. Ganduje tells Bayero, once traditional institution as 4th tier of government, will lead by example. That's what the emir says. So the stories are on the front page of Blueprint for you. Look at this one. CBN releases 12.552 billion naira to poultry farmers for eggs, meat production. Guys, do you know that eggs now cost at least tiny crate of eggs? I mean really tiny eggs cost 1,800 naira. We used to buy them for 1,300, 1,200. Now they're 1,800 for tiny eggs. I understand if you want bigger eggs, you have to pay as much as 2,200 naira. And I don't know what's happening with the school feeding a day program and feeding a child a day program. But I wonder how much the caterers have to now buy eggs from. So maybe the CBN is right on the money, releasing 12.552 billion naira to poultry farmers for eggs and meat production. Look at this at the bottom as well. Bandits hit Kaduna communities, kill 7, kidnap 7 in Zaria. 3 cops injured as gunmen attack Akwa Ibom police station. That's also there as well. A number of other stories for you, but let's leave it there for Blueprint newspapers.
Well, it's about the time for us to take a break now. That's the much we can take of the papers this morning. We're back after these messages. Please stay with us.
It's Saturday, 3rd of July. Ojota has a date with another rally. This time, it's by some Yoruba coalition groups calling for the actualization of Yoruba Nation. As far as they're concerned, there must be a referendum to decide their fate.
seeing peaceful and very orderly disengagement.
They defy the heavy presence of security personnel and even the Commissioner of Police to drive home their demands.
Wearing uniform doesn't mean anything. They are suffering too. The federal government are not taking care of them. Their welfare is zero.
While acknowledging their right to protest, the Lagos Commissioner of Police, however, denies they got permission from him to stage the rally.
We've been here now because we don't want the rally to be hijacked by news, and that's why we are providing security. We did not receive any letter in the past 48 hours. Thursday, so if any letter has been written since Thursday to today, so let the acknowledgement one be brought out. I think it's any letter. We do two of us to let the ministers know that we are ready to take on them if they continue to violate the law. And the other part is that we do the two of us now to let members of the public know that that is the law-abiding members of the public, that we are ready to protect them.
With tension rising, a clampdown on the protesters begins. The police deploys water cannon to arrest the situation. The police appear to have kept their promise not to allow a breakdown of law and order in the city. However, by staging this rally, the protesters have also made their voices heard. Chris Lamps, Channels Television News.
It's the morning after the disrupted rally by Odua Nation agitators, and Ojota, the rally ground, is back to its usual self. Police authorities in the state had said the rally was illegal, as it came at a time the state is still recovering from the damage incurred during the NSAS protest. Lined up here at the police headquarters Ikeja are suspects arrested at the rally ground and some exhibits found on them.
No Yoruba land. This belongs to a chieftaincy group.
The Commissioner of Police, Hakeem Odumosu, explains that the suspects were arrested over their non-compliance to early warnings.
In curtailing their activities, their potent threat to the security of the state, the command arrested 49 suspects with dangerous weapons, including arms, ammunition, axes, cutlasses, charms, and their vehicles, till they came into the state to foment trouble and endanger the peace of the command. Investigation is on. After the investigation, for thorough investigation and possible prosecution.
One of the suspects, however, debunks police claim.
When I wanted to alight, the first people I met stopped me, they checked the vehicle and they say, oh, he's a king, because I'm having my crown on me. I'm having my crown on me. They stopped me, they said, oh, it's Kabiyesi. They checked the vehicle and they said we should go. Immediately after they said we should go, another set of people stopped us. When they stopped,
but the pistol was found in your car.
Not in my car. My own is Jeep.
What of those items did they find in your car?
They didn't find any. They didn't find any. They didn't find any. And the Jeep, Forerunner.
Another major issue that has trailed the rally is the alleged killing of a 14-year-old girl by a police stray bullet, but the state police chief denies any involvement of his officers in the killing.
Either the lady, the girl or the lady in question was shot by the police or by any other person. Now investigation will reveal out. Investigation of cases like that now is not what you just do on one page of newspaper or one day, because you need to go there, you need to get in, and equally now, some investigation needs some forensic analysis too, which police will not do on a day. So whether it was a gunshot, whether it was a sharp object, the fact that the life has been lost, and what led to that one now will be unraveled through the investigation.
From here, the suspect moved to the State Criminal Investigation and Intelligence Department, Bansi Yaba, where they will face the street investigation and prosecution.
In the reports a rally was billed for Friday. The police in Lagos had warned on Thursday that people in Lagos shouldn't join the rally, and nonetheless, the rally went ahead anyway. Those who wanted to join the rally joined. But much later, we saw the arrest and the parade of about 47 people arrested by the police in Lagos, who have said that the rally which held was illegal. And there have been questions around that. You saw the parade there with the other items displayed, some of them guns, some of them paraphernalia of whatever it was. But that's the matter which we're discussing this morning. The rally, the Yoruba Nation rally, which went on over the weekend. We have with us this morning Mr. Lawrence Alobi, who is a former commissioner of police here in the Federal Capital Territory. And I have to say welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
Good morning. I don't know what your take is on the protests that we have seen in recent times. Some of them rallies asking for secession or asking for, agitating for their own nation. What are your thoughts as a police officer and also as a Nigerian citizen?
Yeah, as a Nigerian citizen, the law allows me to organize, to hold rally, to hold civil protests, whether it is done within the law. Like the Constitution provides in Section 41, 42 of freedom of association, freedom of movement. But then Section 45 also provides that whatever rally I'm going to organize will not be a threat to public peace, public defense, protect the life and property of other people and so forth, good public health or morality and so forth. So the law empowers the citizen to organize rallies, but that rally has to be done within the ambit of the law. The law has to be followed. You see, in 2008, there was this case between All Nigerian People's Party and the Inspector General of Police. The party applied to the police for a permit, and the permit said they refused giving the permit. The party went ahead to carry out the protest rally, and the police went to the rally was disrupted, and the party went to court, and the court ruled that the police have no power to issue permits. Then again, Public Order Act also provides under Section 1 that the state governor, the governor of a state has power to organize, to hold rallies, and issue permit. It can delegate those power to the police, commissioner of police of the state, to issue permit, and the police now, if authorized, can allow that rally to go on, or protest or civil protest to go on. But again, like I said, Section 45 provides clearly that any rally, with the right to hold a rally, will be validated when they begin to threaten public peace or public defense, or threat to public peace and security, or public health. You see, even look at the scripture, for instance, the Bible. Why did God punish Adam and Eve? Because Adam and Eve disobeyed the law. Why did God bless Abraham? Because Abraham obeyed the law. You see, your right to enjoy, the right to enjoy your freedom and your privilege, freedom, your right, is predicated on you obeying the law. Because the law is meant to guide the exponential value of law is based on we to control our conduct and behavior for the good of society.
Given, so let's say that is the situation, and that is the situation indeed, but one of the first things which you said was that you have a right of association, yes, the right to organize a rally if you so wish.
Yes.
So why do you think that the police said that the rally which was proposed to hold in Lagos was illegal? What made that particular rally illegal?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, the Public Order Act, laws of the Federation provides that it's the governor of a state who has power to issue permits, not the police. But the governor can delegate the commissioner of police of that state to issue permits for that rally. But if also the same Public Order Act provides that the governor can also prescribe the form which that procession rally will take. That is meant to regulate, ensure that that rally is being regulated. Because in most cases, these rallies or protests have been hijacked by hoodlums and becomes bloody, they cause mayhem, arson, and so forth. And Section 45 provides that you have the right to organize a rally, but that rally should not be a threat to other life and property of other citizens.
From the visuals that we saw,
yeah,
we didn't see that rally had the potential or eventually became rowdy or unruly. Did we see that?
The point is that the police have a duty. The citizens also have a duty. Section 24E of the Constitution provides that it's the constitutional duty of every Nigerian citizen to assist the security agency in maintaining law and order. That is the constitutional duty of every Nigerian. As you have your right to protest, to demonstrate, to do whatever you live, right to freedom of movement, right to association, and so forth, you also have a duty to ensure that law and order is being maintained in the country. Like I said earlier, I said, for you to enjoy your rights, you have a duty to also obey the law. So that the police have to anticipate, because in most cases, you see, in crisis management and law enforcement, you anticipate crisis to manage crisis. You don't like to happen because it might snowball to a point where you cannot manage. So you have to be proactive. You have to anticipate and prepare, take action against such it occurring. That's part of the creative way Nigerian police or security agencies have to manage crisis situations.
Interestingly, Lagos has, would I say, developed a place whereby those who feel aggrieved for anything or have any need to organize a rally, they oftentimes now go to the Gani Fawehinmi, let's say, square. It's not much of a square, but let's call it a square, where you have the statue done in memory of late activist Chief Gani Fawehinmi, SAN. And that's where protests usually hold, whatever grievance you have, and, you know, that's where it's done. On Friday or so, we saw the police in Lagos mobilizing. I wish you could see the visuals there. The police in Lagos mobilizing for that particular protest because they feared that it was going to be, will I say, deadly, or it could get out of hand. And so we saw the police bringing out the equipment in full force to say that they were ready if there were going to be any troublemakers there. What we eventually saw was the police dispersing the protesters who looked like they didn't have much on them. At least that's what it looked like to the cameras. Do you think that it was absolutely necessary for the police to disperse them in any way? Why don't you just leave them until they're spread?
Yeah, you see, one thing again, the police do have to learn how to manage, how to police citizens in a democratic society. We are operating a democracy. We're not a military regime or colonial administration where the rights have to be repressive policing and so forth. You see, when I used to be sweep, I used to be a commander in the 1980s, 1996. There was a protest of all the civil servants in Enugu State. They moved from what they call Freedom Square in Enugu. They marched up to where you have the labor house, teachers' house after the railway line. I was having a meeting in 82D with Colonel GS. My SCP then called, I was assistant commissioner, and the SCP called me on the working team. Lauren, leave that meeting, and go to this crisis. When I came out, I saw, as I moved, I went the crowd. Many of the scholars said, oh, our Messiah has come. Pulling me with tear gas using horsewhip. I said, stop. You know, you don't use horsewhip on police or human beings. They're not animals, they're not cows. The point is that the police need to understand. That's the police mobilizing, I think. Yeah, the police need to understand that they too need to have to. They're policing a democratic dispensation. So this attitude of militarized policing should not be used at all. That's I don't ever advocate the way the military is being used for crowd control or dispersing crowd, because the military are not trained for crowd control. No, thankfully, it's the police here. I mean, we're not saying the military. No, I'm just saying both, because sometimes they use them. Even that the paper reported that the military were also there, police were also there. So what I'm saying is that the police should also understand. Like when I was in service, we need to understand that you need to engage the people. Let them understand you're not there to disrupt to anything against them or something. But let whatever they're doing, let them do it in line with the law. When I was CPFCT, the students of Abuja University blocked the whole of Federal Highway with trailers and tankers. They won't keep their busy, then I don't want to mention his name. I went there. I address the students. I used to be a student activist, right? And we organized Limos go do when who was our president. I addressed the students, and after that I spoke to them. I said, I use, student psychology, Nigerian student both, and young student, great Nigerian students, and so forth. I started talking to them. I said, let us go back and said yes, and think how can I meet dialogue with the government. I traveled with my students from the Abuja highway to the campus. I didn't throw one tear gas. My man was so good. I said, no, you don't throw any tear gas. And again, when officers are on operations, sometimes they don't give the rules engagement to the men. You say boss, men go, they don't know what to do. You have to be in control. I want my men, you don't throw any tear gas or fire a shot without my command. That's my policy. And I've always done that. I've maintained that. I've never threw any tear gas or fire any throughout my stay as CP Abuja, or when I was recommended Enugu when I police. In fact, that Enugu incident, I trekked with them from that point to the secretariat and addressed the workers. I asked them to give me their leader, give me 5 leaders. I told them my commissioner who now told them to the governor, then Chimaroke then. I didn't throw a tear gas. I worked with them. In fact, the distance from here to police headquarters. So it is the police need to apply empathy and compassion, because they have a right to protest. And the government should not just block out people from protesting, because how would they know the feelings of the people they are ruling? The government need to understand that you have to have a listening ear. Understand that that's how you know what people can assess, accountability can assess, are you doing well, are you not doing well? When you dance, you don't see your back. The citizens will know how you are dancing, how you are doing. So the government should have a listening ear. The police should also understand that they're not policing human animals, they're policing human beings. And they have to apply what I call principle of democratic policing. Policing in line with democratic norms and values. And that is, and that is have to respect human rights, in line with the rule of law, and ensure that you are policing to meet the needs of the people.
All right, but Mr. Alubi, if you could just go ahead and give us your concluding perspectives now. Is it that the police is helpless when they have to go out there and enforce a ban? Because people say there's a law that people have a right to protest peacefully. Why does the police always clamp down on such peaceful protests?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chamberlain. You see, the police need to understand too, like I said earlier, that they are policing a democratic society, not just a democratic dispensation. And they have to police in line with democratic norms and values. The type of government in the country determines the style of policing or form of policing or the framework of policing. So Nigerian police should understand, or second agency should know that they are policing a Nigerian democratic society. They should also imbibe democratic policing, which they have to policing in conformity with democratic norms and values, like human rights, protection, and so forth. The point is that when officers lead men to maybe disperse crowd or peaceful protest or demonstrations, they don't give them directive. They don't give the rules of engagement. Some of it just say they just ask the men to emboss, they emboss again, the men just do what they like. I think, like I've always done myself, even with Oshomole, when doing labor, when I was in charge of fellow operations, labor, then Obasanjo, the labor was tough everywhere. But we never one day threw any tear gas or shot any bullet. The point is that we use persuasion. We apply persuasion. We're not here to kill you or to do anything or disturb, but here to maintain law and order in your own interest of the society. And you not only be within the ambit of the law. So the police officer, anybody leading an operation or to quell such demonstrations or disperse, you must always direct their men on the rules of engagement. You must never fire any shot or throw any tear gas, because sometimes the way the police respond to such demonstrations can even provoke some violent action from the citizens. So it requires some persuasion. The police needs training on how to police civil process and civil demonstrations and protests and rallies.
I think it's a fine place to leave it. I mean, there'll continue to be conversations. We have seen protests from NSAS up until now, even before NSAS. But, what happened with NSAS and now with what is happening with agitations, there will be huge questions as to whether or not the police have been fully equipped and trained to be able to handle such protests. But we have to thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us this morning. Mr. Lawrence Alubi is a former commissioner of the police here in the Federal Capital Territory. Thank you once again.
Thank you for having me.
Okay,
and,
let's quickly send this now. to Lagos. I understand my colleagues have questions for you.
Well, we actually do have Mogaji Gwega Dejimo here with us. He is the senior Afenifere chieftain. He joins us this morning. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Well, the rally did hold, but the police eventually they arrested about 49 persons, saying that they violated the ban for that particular protest. So, what point was it that was going to be made, particularly in context of this arrest that have been made by the police?
Good morning, Chamberlain. It's good to be here again. I guess it's a season of sorts, and everything seems to be playing out. The farcical, even the parts of it that are pathetic. We're in a democracy. And we were in a democracy in 2013, 2014, when certain people embarked on similar protests, and people were agitating for something or the other. And I haven't seen anything that is not within the law, unless and except it's one country but two sets of laws. So where do you want us to start from? I'm throwing it back at you. No,
but the thing is, what points did the rally intend to make?
At what point? Well, what I can say is this. I'm not speaking on behalf of the organizers, even though we do have levels of interaction.
Yeah.
But I could say that there was sufficient information from some of the protesters to the authorities, the police, that this is a peaceful thing. And why would it not be a peaceful thing? Why should it be about the location this time around? They've had these rallies in 5 of the other southwest states. They've had it in Oyo. And there was nothing in terms of trouble. And there was nothing in terms of the protesters turning violent. Everything went well in Ekiti. And Moshun was particularly without any issues, free of any molestation. And Akure was massive. The people that came out were in their thousands. So one will now ask, why Lagos? At what point did it turn violent? At the point to which the authorities felt they had to do something because they must have received certain instructions to do certain things. Why would a 14-year-old girl be shot? What was she doing? Did they find anything with her? Why should live bullets be used, even after what happened at the End SARS protest? It simply means that the life of Nigerians suddenly do not matter anymore. It's pathetic, and that is why I'm even venturing out to say it is derisory that a government that came on the strength of protests is now the one that is disallowing it towards the point of which people are being killed. Those people did nothing wrong. I didn't see anything. Did you?
All right, let me even ask you this. So, do you subscribe to the concept of a Yoruba nation?
Well, if it's about the Yoruba nation, the Yorubas have always been a nation. What is a nation? A nation state with everything that goes with it.
In the context of the agitation.
In the agitation, what is the agitation about? It's about self-determination. Some people may want to twist it, but it's no more than that. The AU Charter allows for it. The United Nations has 5 different organs to deal with those who have issues, indigenous people who have issues with the way they're being treated. And I can remember, even our president, when he came in 2015, on his first appearance at the United Nations, he was clamoring for the creation of a new nation out of Israel. He pleaded for the cause of the Palestinians. That was his very first outing ever, that they should have their own country. So why would he do that for Palestinians? Because he felt they had a case. Now, if he feels that the Yorubas don't have a case, then invite everybody to the table. Let us put things in perspective. You don't have to treat an issue like self-determination as if it is a crime. But then, of course, what is the modus operandi of this administration? They treat every problem as if it has to be solved with a gun and every solution a bullet. And that is one thing that history will not forget.
All right, so we'll hear the case that you say they've got when we return in just a moment. Do stay with us. All right, welcome back. Well, you say they do have a case. So tell us about this case that you say the Yoruba Nation has.
The events leading to this agitation could be in some kind of what I would call sequential logical process. You remember that we had a Southwest starting from 1951, the very first indigenous government in the whole of Africa started in the Southwest in 1951. But then we still wanted a situation in which the Yoruba race will be comfortable in a union where they won't be treated like second-class citizens. That was the London Conference in '53 that gave back to the Littleton Constitution that allowed a full federalism to be the way and manner by which the country will be managed. And I remember again then, Chief Awolowo, the leader of the Southwest of the Yoruba, wanted a clause that would say that any of the federating units will have the right to say, I want to go, inserted into the 1954 Constitution, the Littleton Constitution. And the leader of the North then, Sir Ahmadu Bello, accepted that very clause. It was only rejected by Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe and the British. And then, of course, the motion for the creation of the Nigerian state was moved in 1953 first. It wasn't successful by Enahoro, but it was moved again in 1957 by Chief Remi Fani-Kayode, and it was accepted. And the initial date was supposed to be 1959. And the 1959 Constitution, in the making of it, Chief Obafemi Awolowo again raised this idea that any of the federating units, if it feels that it's not going to be so properly treated, should be allowed to go. And that was because he believed that Nigeria was a mere geographical expression. If you want to have a nation, you have a nation that is going to allow the people to be free. There must be equity, there must be equality, there should never be inequity, and there should never be iniquity. We shouldn't have prebendalism, we shouldn't have pakistocracy, we shouldn't have nepotism. And those are the things that have led to the agitation today. But again, the usual suspects didn't want that clause to be put in. In fact, the very first time people were going to say they want to leave this country was in 1953 when the Northerners actually brought the word separation, Araba, into the discourse. So why should it be different for the Yoruba when even the Northerners felt at that time that they too should be allowed to go? And let us face it, the 1963 Constitution, there was no constitutional body, there was no constituent assembly. It was a kind of congregation of the 4 units that said, as at that time it had become 4, that said, these are the things we want, these are the laws by which we want to be guided. And the truth of the matter is that, are we being guided by the laws put together by our founding fathers? In which case, do we have unity in this country? Do we have a free and just nation? Do we? And when Chief Obafemi Awolowo, in his wisdom, composed that anthem, the Afenifere anthem, which has now become the Yoruba anthem. He said it is a duty that we owe, that the way of bringing children into this world should not be on the basis of servitude. How a child is born is how a so-called slave is born too. Nobody should be born into slavery. Well, what have we been encountering, particularly in the years ahead after 1979? Is so much of powers to the north, so much powers to the center, and some policies that are against the growth of the south. And I can begin to mention them. And that is the truth about it.
When you said the other time, said that it seems there are different sets of rules for different sets of people on the same issue. What exactly do you mean?
Well, it's like this. You can imagine a governor, Governor Masari of Katsina. The images are all out there, standing with a so-called bandit who's wrapped in bullets, carrying serious assault weapon of the AK-47 type. In public glare, we had a governor, El Rufai, who publicly admitted on national television of paying Fulani killer headsmen rather than arresting them. And let's be safely international about this. Boko Haram, according to the World Terrorist Index, is the second deadliest terrorist group in the world. And the Fulani headsmen, by the same body, created by the United Nations, and labeling the Fulani headsmen as the fourth deadliest terrorist group. But what do you have? You have government officials in the north, governors, and this federal government doing what I call the 5 Ps. In fact, it might be 6 of the Ps. Letter P, that's to say. 1, they protect them. Like you will see Shigumi being in the company of the same security setup and going into the forest to meet with the same people you call bandits who are fully armed. Rather than arrest them, they are protecting them, they are placating them, almost begging them, they are prevaricating to them, they are pampering them, and they are paying them money. 5 Ps. In fact, let's even say that they do all of this to the people that you might say are privileged, people who have a sense of entitlement to everything. And if you ask me again, when does it become a crime for someone to have the elements of his religion freely owned by him, and then you are splashing that on television and making some kind of story out of what you call a phantom, bulletproof, found in somebody's house? Why are you not showing us the test bill owned by the bandits? Why are you not showing us the rosaries owned by certain Christians that you think are criminals? Why create such a dichotomy? Why? And it's pathetic when you begin to hear the president, Major General Muhammadu Buhari, on national television, saying to 2 governors that he said came to him, saying to the president, we have insecurity in our states, and he's telling them to go back and fix it. What are they going to fix? In 2013, I can remember, I think it was on the 30th of January, somebody will have to Google this. The then President Jonathan was told categorically by candidate Muhammadu Buhari to go and resign if he can't handle security. But he's on his beat now. He's throwing the responsibility at the Southwest governors. Why didn't he do it to the Borno State governor then, when it was only about Boko Haram? So why would we have to be in a country where seemingly, perhaps I should even add, administratively, it is one country but two sets of laws, one pertaining to certain people who enjoy the privileges of the accident of where they are born, and others are being treated shabbily, displayed on television as common criminals. And you want the Yoruba nation. And well, let's face it, what does actually make a nation? If it's in terms of population, the Yoruba in this country are about 60 million. In diaspora, add another 20 million. And then you want to treat them shabbily? You don't want to give them as much rights or as many rights as you give to others? And when you look at the economics of it, the Yorubas are responsible for about 67.8% of non-oil revenue. Go to their Apapa port. The three ports there, Roro, Apapa port, Tinkan Island, are sitting on Yoruba soil. And those three ports, in just one local government, they are responsible for the revenue that I'm talking about, let alone Sebeboda, Idiroko. And where are the other borders? Those other borders are free. People know. But here, where we make all the money, the people are treated shabbily. You don't even find the Yoruba adding any of the important security agencies. We have about 17 of them.
And that sort of brings me to the next point. Earlier on, you talked about coming to the table, as it were. The government should invite, the representatives sort of to the table. And I'd like to know the type of, or the manner in which this should be. Because over time, and even till today, we've had governors on NEC, we've had representatives in the Senate, House of Reps, we still have anyway. So how is it that they've not collectively come together to say, this is what we want, this is what we feel, this is what has been happening, and we're not okay with it? And even up till now, how has it been so difficult to have them come together and say this with one voice?
That's an important question, and I thank you for it. When you have people telling you, go to the National Assembly and sort things out, it is because they know in their deepest state of mind that the National Assembly is owned by them. If people are telling you, go that way, when everybody is asking that we should sit down and talk, it shows that they have the control and they know that they are sending you on what the Yoruba call Arodon. Arodon is like, when we were little and our mothers would tell us, when we are particularly irritating to them, go and collect something from the neighbor. The neighbor knows the language, sends the child to another neighbor, and by the time it is evening, the child comes back home, the mother is free of the trouble. They want to send us on a wild goose chase. Go to the House of Reps. In numbers, they have more than 100 members of the North over the numbers of the South. So how are we going to be able to present our case when it is highly skewed against us? Go to the Senate. To tell you the truth, it is pathetic. There are 19 states, over 17 states. That's a clear six senators plus the one in Abuja, 7 against what we have in the South. What we need is a dialogue. But when the authorities, the president, is not agreeing to a dialogue, when the president seems to have particularly few options, perhaps only one option at any time, when he's dealing with us, and that is to say, I will let them know through the language that they understand. What language are we talking about? A different kind of language to the Igbo agitation, a different kind of language to the Yoruba agitation? Of course, that is what it means. Kill them. That's the language. clamp them down. That's the language. But when it comes to the bandits, oh, give them amnesty. Talk to them. Even suggesting that they pay them. They pay terrorists. But they don't want to dialogue because they believe that they have all the aces. If this country is to progress, then we should have a semblance of a dialogue. In 1999, Afenifere came out plainly in the sight of all.
All right.
Excuse me, can I finish? Because this is an important aspect. Afenifere came out and said that this 1999 constitution, which was not brought out by any constituent assembly, it is not a constitution of we the people, should be thrown out. It was plain. Afenifere even told the governors and the representatives then to boycott Abuja. For some reason, the AD governors didn't do it. But then Papa Ademanjo went to the Okuta panel and clearly stated his case. President Obasanjo realized there was a need to have everything done to change that constitution because it was not workable. And the structure that goes with it will not stand. Of course, he tried his best. There was dialogue, except that there was this idea of a third-term thing that threw it out of control in the National Assembly. In the same manner of having to have a dialogue, Afenifere again approached President Jonathan, and that was the beginning of the Confab report, which was put together by Dr. Okurumu, a senior Afenifere member and leader, and Professor Bolaji Akiyemi, who was co-chair, and Afenifere member too.
All right.
So we have had dialogues in the past, but right now, this administration, this president, doesn't seem to even want to consider all options or any option. If we are talking about options, compromise is the cheapest lawyer. Why can't we dialogue? You don't want to dialogue? Of course we are going to protest. We can't continue to live without dignity. We are born with dignity.
Okay.
And all over the world, the Yorubas are noted for that. Chief Awolowo wrote in 1981 that the Yorubas are slow to anger.
So I guess
accommodating.
The options...
All we want is let us sit down and talk. Excuse me. And then we brought about the 2017 Ibadan Declaration.
Okay, well, we'll get your point.
But then it didn't work.
We'll get that point,
if we asked you for that in 2017 and you are not giving it to us, then we are free to now seek by any means the realization of self-determination for the Yoruba.
So in other words, I mean, that option will always be there for that dialogue.
Thank you.
That is a fantastic place to let it go. Mogaji Gwega Adejumo, Senior Afenifere Chieftain, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. All right, but Ms. Alubi, if you could just go ahead and give us your concluding perspective now. Is it that the police is helpless when they have to go out there and enforce a ban? Because people say there's a law that people have a right to protest peacefully. Why does the police always clamp down on such peaceful protests?
Yeah, thank you very much, Samberlin. You see, the police need to understand too, like I said earlier, that they are policing a democratic society, not just a democratic dispensation. And they have to police in line with democratic norms and values. The type of government in the country determines the style of policing or form of policing or the framework of policing. So Nigerian police should understand, or second agency should know that they are policing a Nigerian democratic society. They should also imbibe democratic policing, which they have to policing in conformity with democratic norms and values, like human rights, protection, and so forth. The point is that when officers lead men to maybe disperse crowd or peaceful protest or demonstrations, they don't give them directive. They don't give the rules of engagement. Some of it just say they just ask the men to emboss, they emboss again, the men just do what they like. I think, like I've always done myself, even with Oshomole, when doing labor, when I was in charge of fellow operations, labor, then Obasanjo, the labor was tough everywhere. But we never one day threw any tear or shot any bullet. The point is that we use persuasion. We apply position. We're not here to kill you or to do anything or disturb. We're here to maintain law and order in your own interest of the society. And you not really be within the ambit of the law. So the police officer, anybody leading an operation or to quell such demonstrations or disperse, you must always direct their men on the rules of engagement. You must never fire any shot or throw any tear gas, because sometimes the way the police respond to such demonstrations, can even provoke some violent action from the citizens. So it requires some persuasion. The police need training on how to police civil process and civil demonstrations and protests and rallies.
I think it's a fine place to leave it. I mean, there'll continue to be conversations. We have seen protests from NSAS up until now, even before NSAS. But, you know, what happened with NSAS and now with what is happening with agitations, there will be huge questions as to whether or not the police have been fully equipped and trained to be able to handle such protests. But we have to thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us this morning. Mr. Lawrence Alubi is a former commissioner of the police here in the Federal Capital Territory. Thank you once again.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll be taking on other matters equally as important when we come back. Please stay with us. And so it happened that 13 years after the idea was mooted on the floor of the National Assembly, the Petroleum Industry Bill, after many bumps and many hurdles, eventually was passed by the Ninth Assembly. But then, while they're giving themselves a pat on the back for being able to break the jinx, it would seem, there have now been questions because it was not exactly an easy one, as you saw in the report put together by our correspondent there, Emperor Simon. There have been controversy raised over certain clauses in the PIB, but to shed a little more light on what was passed, the advantages that we will seek to reap as a country, what that should do for our petroleum sector, and to also shed light or maybe dispel whatever controversies have arisen as a result of the passage of the PIB. We have with us this morning Senator Abiy Sekibo, who is...
No, George Thompson Sekibo.
Beg your pardon. Senator George Thompson Sekibo, who is a member Senate Committee on the Petroleum Industry Bill and was chief negotiator for the southern counterparts to negotiate with the northern counterparts. You're welcome to the program this morning, Senator.
Thank you very much.
And we also have with us Honorable Sada Soli, who is a member ad hoc committee on the PIB and also chairman House Committee on Water Resources. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you for having me.
So finally, Senator, 13 years after the jinx has been broken, but then I'm sure that you have been seeing questions or some misunderstanding arising as a result of the passage of the PIB. First of all, tell us some of the advantages you hope will accrue to Nigeria as a result of the passage of this bill.
Well, the petroleum industry, if we are not able to pass this bill now, we'll be having more complications and more problems. Because from the experts' projections, the next maybe 30 years or thereabout, petroleum product may not be the fancy of the period again. People are going back to different kind of energies to use in their domains. You will see that in some climate, cars have been developed that will be using electricity and maybe gas, you know. So if we're able to fine-tune and properly pass this bill after the conference committees and maybe sent it by the president, the petroleum industry will have very good leverage and operate more properly. The IOCs who are doing businesses here will have more confidence, because you will observe that for the past number of years, over 13 years, there have not been major investment in the sector because of uncertainty and fears. But with the bill assented to, we believe that most of those investments will come in. We were informed that over $50 billion that was earmarked to develop places in Africa, only about 3% of such money came to Nigeria because of fear. Meanwhile, we are the highest producers of petroleum product in Africa.
So the fear happened after the introduction of the PIB
Yes, after the
to the
introduction
National
of PIB,
Assembly?
yes, earlier when it was first introduced to National Assembly, because a businessman will want to know the stability, or will have to forecast what he's going to do, is going to make out of the business he's bringing to this place. And if he's not sure that the law will be in their own favor, then he has options. There are several countries that before were frontiers, but now, today, they are really producing oil. So he would like to go to an area that is much more conducive, much more friendly, much more, a little bit less tax-free, for him to carry out their businesses.
So the uncertainty which hovered in the air, for the oil companies, for the international oil companies, which prevented them from investing because they didn't know which way Nigeria was going. But there was a reason why Nigeria thought up a petroleum industry bill in the first instance. We felt that we're not making as much as we could make from our petroleum sector, and so we thought the PIB was important. What advantages specifically are we hoping that the PIB would confer on us as a country? Do you want to shed a little more light on that?
Okay. Well, one of the advantages is it will promote efficient and effectiveness in the industry. It will create conducive business environment. Above all, it will help and protect health of persons and environment by the time, and also it will create peaceful coexistence between host communities and the operators, that's the licensees. These are some of the advantages of deregulating the industry, putting the industry out there. Then again, it will create and promote accountability. It will greatly do away with the level of corruption in the industry, because here it's unbundled. The private sectors will bring in their money. A lot of bottlenecks are warned. It will open up the industry to see, for people to see, for investors to come in and participate fully. These are some of the advantages that I can see in the passage of the PIB.
One of the things which it recommends is that the NNPC be unbundled. We had heard about the unbundling of the NNPC before now from previous ministers of state, of petroleum, of the NNPC. Now we are understanding that the NNPC is going to be limited liability company.
Yes.
So who exactly is going to be the regulator of the oil sector? Because we know that before now, the NNPC performed both roles.
Well, you see, the NNPC will be unbundled. It will be NNPC Limited. It will operate like Aramco in Saudi Arabia. It will operate like Petronas in Malaysia. It will operate like Petrobras in Brazil. It will be an operator. It will compete. Now, those that will regulate, there is the commission, which will regulate the upstream. There is the authority, which will regulate the midstream and the downstream. And the authority will report to the minister, and the minister will give general direction, just like normal law that comes into a business. But NNPC will be unbundled, and it will become a limited liability.
One of the things which I find interesting is that, consensus did not come easy on this bill. We still see that there is a disparity in what the House passed and what the Senate passed. And where we've seen that disparity the biggest or the loudest is in terms of what should accrue to host communities. It's even a miracle that they were able to agree on who a host community will be, because we understand initially people thought that the host communities will be where the product is produced. Is that right? But we understand that now the definition seems to have changed to anywhere there is a pipeline. Is that correct, Senator?
No, not quite correct. Not quite correct. Now, first of all, a host community includes anywhere that is production of oil and gas and such facilities. That is the current definition. Now, if that is the current definition, that is the view. Some of these definitions are ambiguous. That is the view people are claiming that, okay, if a pipeline passes through your place, maybe it will be part of a host community. Now, assuming a gas pipeline or petroleum pipeline burst along the line, that will be spilled. if there is speed, I'm sure the people in that environment may also have some problem. Now, we even have another problem, the other host community or impacted community. Host community or impacted community. But for me, for several years, from about 50 years or more, these operations have been on, and the host communities have not gotten anything directly given to them. They have not. This is the first time this attempt has been made, that something is given to them, at least to ameliorate their suffering for all along this period. The issue of two different versions in the bill, House of Reps give 5% and the Senate give 3%. The joint committee of both chambers agree on the 5%, actually. We agree on the 5%. And unfortunately, in the morning of, again, before the debate, or the clause by clause, the consultation, the Southern Senators Forum set up a consultative body, and I headed it to negotiate with our northern partners. And we did that one, and virtually every person we met, including the Senate President and the leader, agreed with us that we will keep it at 5%. It was agreed up till that morning. And I'm not quite sure the reason why they brought in the GMD of NNPC and the Minister for Petroleum, Minister for Petroleum, to address the Senate. And after addressing the Senate, I am sure all of them adduce the fact that 5% would be too much from the operating companies. And I advise that it be 3%. The bill originally came with 2.5%. We were pushing it to 5%. The joint committee of both chambers agreed on 5%. In the morning of the consideration, what was in the bill was 5%, not 3%. But somebody got up and made an amendment because it was an agreement I believe they had. You know, they had that money. And you know, the National Assembly, they put the question, and then actually the yeas have it. Other proposals came of adjustment. The Senate President couldn't take it, so I got up to ask for a division of the House. Now, if the House was divided, we'll be able to know exactly who agree for 5%, who agree for 3%. But I was prevailed upon. And, you know, it's a chamber. Chamber has its own politics. If even some of your Southern colleagues are not really showing that much of interest, apart from majorly those from the South that are showing that keen interest. So even if the House was divided, you are going to lose it. Although it would have been better, you lose gallantly than even giving up. But it's a chamber. So after such prevailing, we have to do. But I know that it is not yet a law. We have only passed 2 versions, so it's not yet a law. So the people in the South and the Niger Delta region should relax, because I believe that even our counterpart in the House of Reps are not happy that the Senate took that 3% decision. They are not happy. We have interacted with many of them. So I believe that during the conference committee, we'll be able to harmonize and get a figure. Maybe 3%, maybe 5%. But of course, the hope of every Southerner or Niger Delta person is that, look, this thing should go up to 5%. Whatever reason the operators have, the NNPC have, that if they take it to 5%, it will pose some difficulties for the operators. And they came and gave some figure, 3% of that fund of the operating costs that will be taken is about 206 billion that will come out per annum.
Naira or dollars?
No, 206 billion naira. It's actually 315, no, actually 502 billion dollars, which is translated to 206 billion naira. And of course, you know, when your counterpart hear this figure, they claim that, oh, you're already having 13% on the derivation. You have the NDDC where companies are already paying 3%, and so many interventions. You know, they mentioned the Niger Delta Ministry, Amnesty Department, and all that. They felt that so much is going to the host communities. That is their feeling. But they couldn't realize that this is the first time directly an intervention is being made for the host communities. You know, so I believe that we may have some further negotiation. We may have some further talks. And when the conference committee will meet, I believe that it might be 5%. Because we are still pushing. And many of those in the House of Reps are also of the view that it should be left at 5%. I don't know why we are considering much more of the comfort of operators and not the suffering of the people in the Niger Delta region. You know?
There'll be huge questions as to how that, even whatever, I mean, whether 3% or 5%, how the monies approved are going to go directly and how those monies will be utilized within the communities. There'll be huge questions, especially when you look at the fact that the local government system is weak. There is no constitutional role for traditional rulers. So who precisely is going to be receiving the funds meant directly for the host communities? But let me quickly ask Honorable. First and foremost, I don't know if you want to quickly intervene in this 5%, 3% brouhaha.
Yes, you see what played out in the two chambers is just legislative dynamics.
Yes.
The Joint Committee agreed in the draft report to be presented, to be laid before the two chambers. And once a committee lays a report before the chamber, the committee's job is over. It is the fate of that report is determined by the 360 members or the 109 senators. I think what actually played out with respect to the host community funding is basically legislative dynamics. But we still have another opportunity to redress some of these dynamics when we talk to each other. It's normal. It's a normal parliamentary issues. We'll talk to ourselves and we will come to agree. I don't think my colleagues from the South should express any sadness. I'm sure we will agree. Everybody has the feelings of the South. Anybody who has the history, who has the knowledge of what's happening in the South knows the degradation, knows the abandonment of the host community or generally the communities in the oil-producing areas. We know the degradation. We know the way they are left alone to their fate. We know that. Every member of the National Assembly, I can say, with this PIB, has a clear understanding of the shortchanging of the people in the oil-producing areas. So I just want to allay the fears of my elder brother that I'm sure we will come to a position whereby the people in the oil-producing areas will smile.
I'm wondering, the definition of host communities has still not been made very clear. I do not know if you heard the controversy as well, because, I mean, Senator also made reference to communities that could be impacted as a result of oil exploration or pipelines, let's say oil spillage and things of the sort. Are those communities also considered host communities if, for instance, there is a spillage of oil in the communities?
Well, the understanding is the host communities generally is supposed to be a community where there is an oil and gas operations. But that was the idea, that was the argument that was canvassed by some of our colleagues that why don't we say impacted communities? But you see, it's not fair if you say impacted community, where you have a small village or a town where the pipeline just passed by and then it will enjoy the same benefits where a community which their environment is degraded, they cannot have adequate water supply, they cannot even fish, they cannot even farm. And I think we have come to agree that the host community basically should be the communities that are hosting operations of oil and gas or all petroleum operations. That is, I think, they understand. And I think it has come to be agreed that the host community should be communities that are experiencing or that are impacted by oil and gas operations.
And that was what was passed in the PIB.
Yes, no, but you see, that's a problem. When the committees went around for public hearing to get a briefing from the various stakeholders in the various states, those affected canvassed for inclusion of impacted communities. Because some of our colleagues from this part of the country don't know.
From what parts of the country specifically?
Outside the Niger Delta region.
Or rather, those that are not from the oil producing, because we have 9 oil producing states.
Yeah, from the Niger Delta region. Let me call it that way. If we are producing oil in a particular community A, and then, for instance, as gas flare, the gas flaring effect may not necessarily be in that community alone. That's true. It has to go around because gas goes into the air and is carried along. Now, if it is oil, and assuming there is oil spill, and it's spill on the river, it goes to everywhere along the coastal line. So whether you are having equipment for producing oil or not, you have the effect. For instance, in the Niger Delta region, virtually every sea hasn't got any fish again to harvest. You know why? Because of the pollution. So when we're talking about pollution, pollution is not limited to a particular spot, even on the ground, in the air, and on the sea. So it is spread. So the idea is, if you are producing, if community A is producing oil, they have equipment, infrastructure that is producing oil, drilling oil, and maybe gas infrastructure, oil infrastructure. But community C, D, and F that are close to it may have the same effect. That you are, even what you are showing here, there is no pipeline there. But you see that's something. The spirit from that place, that particular place, we take to several miles away from that area. So we are thinking that when they are talking about host community, we are going to even create more conflict by taking whatever is due and give to these people directly. Because the adverse effect of the operation will affect much more than those who are in the area where infrastructure is erected.
So precisely what solutions have you brought up to mitigate this potential point of conflict?
Yes. You know, the settlers are to appoint a trust fund. A trust fund. Trustees. And when they appoint the trust fund, they are going to take people from those communities affected. We believe that at that point, wisdom will prevail and they will see some of these communities as part of the host communities. Otherwise, it will cause more crises in the region. That is just the truth. Because we are drilling oil in community A, and I'm suffering in community C or D, and they say I'm not impacted. He said I'm not affected. It's not quite true. Secondly, the oil we are talking about may be also in community E or F, but it has to be taken from one spot. So maybe they decide to take it from community A and not community F so because it is oil, it's like water. If you are drilling water and you are taking the water, it doesn't mean you are taking it directly just from the pond where you are drilling it. It is an aqua system on the ground. So you are gathering it from around a very wider area than just that particular spot where the pipe goes in. So that is our thinking. And I believe that when the trust fund will be set up, the trustees will be able to, with their wisdom, understand how to manage and pacify virtually every stakeholders in the region.
Let's quickly flip this to Lagos now. I understand my colleagues have questions. Gentlemen.
All right, yeah. Well, Honorable Soli, let me ask you this. I mean, there are lots of reactions concerning this particular bill. Of course, you know how dominant that host community component is. But some of the reactions coming through say they're not happy with that 3% to the host community. And in fact, some of the points raised there say that how come that this 3% that will be going to the host community also includes communities where pipeline passes through. That's the pipeline-bearing community. So they wonder that to them, that doesn't sit right.
Well, you see, these are all the nitty-gritties that will be addressed by the trust fund. The trustees will sit down, draw up regulations and rules, how the advantages of the 5% will be enjoyed by the host community. You see, the idea of defining, we have not defined exactly how much coverage will be a host community. Yes, like what the distinguished senator said earlier on, the impacted community that is near a producing community, what will they do? I think that issue will be addressed by the trustees. The trustees will be attracted from different communities around the the operating areas, not necessarily the backyard of a community that is experiencing this operation, but largely will be done through regulations and through rules. And I'm sure with the way the host community development, host community trust fund is being organized, it will be inclusive, very, very inclusive with even the impacted communities. So I think nobody will be left out in this arrangement.
All right, if I understand your point, are you subscribing to that position that impacted communities should not benefit from that same 3% wherein the host communities benefit?
I think we should not hype on the 3% because we are not yet agreed on the 3%. The 3% is the Senate version. We have the version of the 5% of the House. We are yet to go for a conference to agree on which figure will be printed into the final bill to be sent to the executive for signing. But the idea is, I still subscribe to the fact that even impacted communities should be part and parcel of this host community funding, because look at when you look at the gas flaring, the impacted community near where the flaring is, they are in perpetual daylight. If you have been there, you experience that in perpetual daylight. If you know what is flaring, because flaring will stay there for 24 hours, 360 days, it is there. And those communities under or even 2,000, 3,000 meters away, they'll be impacted by that flaring. So I think they should benefit from that arrangement.
Senator, I think there is a need to clear some things from what you have just said now. So exactly this host community, impacted community thing, there seems to be a dichotomy. Exactly who gets this proposed 3% or 5%, whichever one it is? Is it the host community or the impacted community?
Now, the purpose for the 3% is to ameliorate or solve the problem that is caused by the oil production activities. It's not just a share given to a people. So if that is the reason, then it means that if I am impacted, if I have a problem based on your exploration and exploratory activities, even though you are doing it in community A, I'm in community D, and I'm also having that problem, I should have a share of it. That is my thinking, and that is the thinking of so many people in the South when we went around to get the opinion on the bill. Some states may not even have one oil well, but you'll be surprised that when there is a spill and it's maybe even somewhere in the offshore and the wind drafts it down to the intercoastal line. You may not have oil, but the spill is on your coastal line. So you see that.
Yes, Senator, I get that point.
I agree with the Honorable.
Yeah, I get that point, Senator, but just one moment.
We look at the issues properly.
Well, it's in terms of the disbursement. Let me ask the Honourable. It's in terms of the disbursement that we're talking about. You mentioned the fact that it would seem like the impacted communities are not going to get anything. So I just want clarity on to whom this 3% or 5%, whichever one is eventually agreed to, will go. Is it the host communities or the impacted communities?
Well,
trying to draw from what you said earlier.
I know where you are driving.
Yes.
According to the provisions of the draft bill or the bill now, is the host community. The impacted community is something different, which I believe when the bill has come into force, the trustees will sit down, come up with the regulations. That's not the end of this. Because remember, there could be subsidiary legislation which will address some of the issues that the bill could not have addressed at the moment. And still there is a chance, but you see, the main idea of this is this host community funding will foster sustainable development for the host community, will bring peaceful coexistence between the host community and licensees, and also, you see, will create a framework to support development in host community. So it's so wide, but the idea of not addressing the issue of impacted community, I'm sure the bill, when it comes in force, will address the issue when there is probably the need for subsidiary legislation.
I mean, in other words, essentially, what might be passed eventually might even be way different from what we're seeing now. So this is not all, or this is not the final version, as you've said. But let me take this back to Senator Sekibo and just, explore this. Interestingly, I use explore because it's about this Frontier Exploration Fund for, frontier exploration, as it were. There's been a lot of talk around it because people cast their minds back to when exploration began in Nigeria, the process, and they wonder why set money aside for this Frontier Exploration Fund? Why not just allow companies that want to explore come and invest, and if they get oil or whatever, fine. If they don't, fine. Why take resources from NNPC Limited and use it for that purpose?
Well, I will answer that question, but let me just do a little clarification. First of all, virtually every person before thought that the frontier funds were to use to develop oil infrastructure in the northern part of the country. But that is not the truth. The truth is that what are frontiers? Frontier areas are areas where we suspect there is oil, but it has not been developed. All such areas. So the frontier funds will be used for up to about 6 or 7 different places. First, the ultra deep water Niger Delta area. Then the Calabar embankment. Then Anambra platform, Dahomey Basin, Bida Basin, Benue Trough, Chad Basin, and Sokoto Basins. Yes, there is the argument that when this fund is released, because there is already some work in the Chad Basin area, it will be taken to much of that place. Well, it's a possibility. It's a matter of those who are handling the administration. But I believe that the fund is a national fund for national issues where we expect oil that is available. The fund will be used for that area. Now, whatever fund that is used for that area is recoverable. It means that if we get the data that there is oil in the Chad Basin, for instance, and then explorers come in to take over, they buy this data from us and pay this money back to the national coffers. So it is like an investment we are making. We are making an investment than waiting for operators to come in to go and start the research, to go and do the exploration, and to see whether we have oil or not. The country want to do it and keep and sell the record because the fund is recoverable. And when it is recovered, it goes back to the national pause, national pause. So for a country that is an oil-bearing company, what I don't actually agree with is maybe the figure, maybe 30%, maybe seems a little bit fairly high. Otherwise, I think there's nothing really wrong because they can still be finding more oil also in the Niger Delta region. They are going to find oil in our deep waters. They are going to find oil in our coastal waters where we've not gotten oil yet. In some cities, some communities that were not oil-bearing in 1958, in 1968 are bearing oil now because people carry out exploration activities and find out more oil. Those activities will still be going on. Data will still be collected in the south, in the north, wherever. And if any IOC comes in to explore and harvest the oil there, then you have to buy the data that have been collected, and that fund goes back to the country.
From what I gather, I mean, I'm so sorry, Honorable, we're totally out of time. Yeah. But from what I gathered, you said there is still a conference committee to harmonize. Is that correct?
Yes.
Before this is sent to the president for assent?
Yes.
So there's still one more stage before it gets to the president's desk?
Yes.
And you're hopeful that this time around the president will put his pen to paper?
No, he will, because the way this bill was handled, or is being handled, is different from the other
previous ones.
Previous one. Now, in this bill, the executive and National Assembly are working together.
Okay. And it's without prejudice to what was done or accomplished by the 8th Assembly?
without prejudice.
Yeah, yes.
Well, we have to thank you both for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. We believe that this is a conversation that will be ongoing. I'm sure that even when the president signs, there will be opportunity for another discussion. Of course, when implementation is about to start, hopefully the rancor, which wisdom, you have said that you hope that wisdom will prevail. So hopefully wisdom will prevail. And when it's not prevailing, we hope that wisdom of people like you who saw through the bill will come to play. Thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. Senator Thompson George Sekibo is a member Senate Committee on the Petroleum Industry Bill, and we also had Honorable Sada Soli, who is a member ad hoc committee on the PIB and also Chairman House Committee on Water Resources. Gentlemen, thank you once again for coming on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, we do have some breaking news, and it is
This is Channels Television's breaking news.
Yes, we do have this, that bandits have kidnapped an unspecified number of students in another Kaduna school. The bandits suspected to be kidnappers attacked a private school, Bethel Baptist School, located at Maraban Rido area in Chukun local government area of Kaduna State, abducting an unspecified number of students. The bandits are said to have invaded the school located along Kaduna-Kachia Road in the early hours of this morning and started shooting sporadically into the air before kidnapping the students. 4 of the students escaped, while the rest were taken away by the bandits to an unknown destination. Again, bandits have kidnapped an unspecified number of students at Bethel Baptist School, located at Maraban Rido area in Chukun local government area of Kaduna State. A really disturbing development. We'll certainly keep you updated as matters develop. But you have sent in feedback, and we cannot do but take some of it before we go. Gentlemen.
Well, yeah, Bamidele Kingsley talking about the state of the nation says all economic indicators clearly pointing to perilous time and dangers ahead. About half of the population live in abject poverty. Millions of children out of school. Millions of Nigerians are homeless. Surging unemployment, insecurities, income inequalities, decaying infrastructure, high level of corruption. They are the remote causes of these continuous agitations and uprisings. The government can pretend to turn blind eye to the injustices in our foundation. Let's discuss our togetherness before the looming woes befall us.
Well, Professor Inakena sends this one in. I want to get a dictionary. Inexorably, the agitation for political balkanization of Nigeria is inevitable. It's time political elites respect the voice of the people and come to a dialogue table to iron out this impugned perceived agitation. Let's come together and talk on table of political referendum in the least on how to form the nexus of the next roadmap of a truly sustainable economic prosperity of a new Nigeria.
On the Yoruba Nation rally outcome, Yomi Williams says, what factors could be influencing a sudden and rather unprecedented demand for self-determination in the Southwest, a region known as the balancing act in Nigeria political space?
What about Famous? Famous says, the law enforcement agency should tell us the section of our constitution that prohibits charms ownership. Oh boy.
Interesting.
Wow. Well, it's a fine place to leave it this morning. Thank you so much for watching. As we did say, we'll keep you updated on the development in Kaduna, where students have just been kidnapped in a secondary school in Chikun local government area of the state. But thank you so much for sending in your feedback as always. I'm Maukwe Ogun Yusuf.
I'm Kayode Kikiolu.
I'm Ayo Makide. Have a good day.
I'm Chamberlain, so we'll see you later.